Thank you, folks. It's a pleasure being here tonight. The view from this place is breathtaking. The feeling from this place is breathtaking. I got infected by Ojai in 1970. It hasn't left me since. I've become very concerned about its future, especially its water future. So that's why I'm here tonight, to talk to you about that. I see some people in the audience that I recognize that I'd like to introduce. We have Mr. Steve Wickstrom here tonight. He's the General Manager of the Casitas Municipal Water District. And also on the board at Casitas is Mary Bergen. Where did you go? There's Mary. Mary Bergen. She's a board of directors at Casitas. And we have Mr. Bert Rapp here tonight. He's the manager of the Ventura River Water District. And I apologize if I've missed anybody else of importance. Please raise your hand. You should all raise your hand. Anyway, it's great to be here, and it's great to see such a nice turnout. I'd like to introduce my wife, Brenda. She's going to be at the laptop controls tonight, and she is also responsible for the graphics in this slide presentation. I have a difficult time drawing a stick figure, and thanks to her, we have some nice graphics to go along in the presentation. So let's get on with the first one. Mark Twain gave this advice, and what I'd like to caution you is that I gathered facts, but I promise that I have not tried to distort them. I'm presenting facts that I've gathered from the different agencies and the different sources around the Ojai Valley, and I really feel like the data that I've gathered, all the data I've gathered, is traceable to a reliable source. However, in this presentation, you're going to hear some of my opinions and some of my thoughts. You're not all going to agree with them. However, they are mine and mine alone that I've developed. So since I have the podium tonight, you're going to have to at least hear those. Okay. So I don't know all of your backgrounds. Obviously, I know Mr. Wickstrom's, Mary Bergen's, Bert Rapp's background, so I don't want to insult your intelligence on these issues, but I don't know that all of you are acquainted with all the details about our water, so I'm going to start with some basic information. So I hope you bear with me. If you know all of this, try to stay awake, and we'll move on to other interesting stuff. So what are the current water sources in the Ojai Valley? This is a nice little picture. We have basically in our area, we have 3 groundwater basins. The one on the right in the gold color is the Upper Ojai Groundwater Basin. And the chart down below, I don't know how well you can see that, but this is an older chart. And it gives you an idea of how many wells are drilled in these different basins. So the Upper Ojai Groundwater Basin caters to the wells in Upper Ojai. Then we have the large brown basin, that is our basin, the Ojai Groundwater Basin. A little further west, in the yellow, is the Upper Ventura River Groundwater Basin. And then off to the west further is good old Lake Casitas, our only surface water source in the area. So for our concerns, the Ojai Basin, the Upper Ventura River Basin, and Casitas are really our sources of water. So what are the current backup water sources for Ojai, assuming that these that I just mentioned go dry or get too low to pump water? Oh, there are none. I'm not trying to be too facetious here, but I ran into a fellow the other day who said, you know, I just talked to a friend of mine in Ojai, and he really thought that we had a backup source for water if our basins and the lake go dry. He was shocked when I told him that no, there is no backup from these water sources. So now we get down to the question, and this is a beautiful valley oak on the Ojai Valley in-grounds. And the question that we're asking tonight is, can the Ojai Valley really run out of water? And the answer to that is, of course, it can. The next question is, will it? And the answer to that question is, who knows? So some of you may think this is Gene Kelly over here on the lamppost. Actually, it was a picture of me taken in 1969 in Oxnard when we had all of the rain in 1969. So our only source of water in the Ojai Valley is local rain. And when I talk about local rain, I'm talking about rain that's in excess of 10 inches per year. Rain lower than that does very little to contribute to storage either in Lake Casitas or in the groundwater basins. So if we have several years of less than 10 inches of rain, we need to call that a drought. So here's a diagram about where rainfall matters. In this diagram, we have the Santa Ynez Range off to the left. We have the Nordhoff Ridge off to the right. And if we look at the cloud in the top dead center, that rain is over the Matilahaw Canyon. And runoff from rainfall up there contributes to water flow in the Matilahaw Creek. And obviously we have rain up Wheeler Gorge Way, contributes to runoff in the North Fork of the Matilahaw Creek. Both of those contribute to flow in the Ventura River. Once that water gets in the Ventura River, if it's substantial enough, we'll increase the groundwater, we'll increase the levels in the upper Ventura River groundwater basin. The Ventura River obviously flows right through that. And if we have enough water in the Ventura River, and if we can satisfy all of the steelhead regulations, we can actually divert water into Lake Casitas from the Ventura River in the diversion canal that you see on the chart. So the Santa Ynez Mountains, if we get runoff from the southern slopes of the Santa Ynez Mountains, there are a couple of major drainages that go into Lake Casitas. One is the Coyote Creek drainage, and the other is the Santa Ana Creek drainage. So if we get substantial rainfall there, we get runoff from those two creeks into Lake Casitas. So we have basically three areas, or three paths of water into Lake Casitas. Going over to the right on the Nordhoff Ridge and over the Ojai Basin, we get rain there. The runoff from Nordhoff Ridge and obviously the rain impinging on the Ojai Basin. Did any of you see the water flowing down San Antonio Creek this past winter, or Thatcher Creek? We really had some good runoff there. So we lost a lot of that, but we also gained a lot of water in the Ojai groundwater basin. We're going to be talking acre-feet as this presentation goes on. And again, I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I have had people say, what the heck is an acre-foot? Well, if we can visualize a football field is roughly an acre. Not quite, but I'm just saying roughly now to get our imaginations working. If we put a foot of water on a football field, that's about an acre-foot of water. So it's a lot of water. How many acre-feet of water do we use? 1 acre-foot per year amounts to about 893 gallons per day. California set a drought standard a while back of 55 gallons per person per day as a recommended water use during a drought. We have a family of 4, that amounts to around 220 gallons per day for a family of 4, and that's about 25% of that 893. So if we go by these standards, a family of 4 abiding by the drought standards would use about 1/4 of an acre-foot per year. And there are different standards out there, and you'll read them in the newspaper. You'll read anything that a family of 4 uses 2 acre-feet per year down to an acre-foot, or down to 1/4 of an acre-foot per year. So a lot of people interpret these standards in a different way. But according to the drought standard from California, this is what it amounts to. It would be fun if you would all take a look at your own water bills to see exactly how much water you use in your household. How much water did the Ojai Valley use in this 2015-2016 water year? I decided to try to get a handle on how much water does the Ojai Valley really need. In this particular year, Casitas sold a little over 14,000 acre-feet of water. The breakdown of the distribution of that water is on the left-hand side, where 3,700 acre-feet went to Ventura, 493 went to other that we couldn't quite pin down. The Rincon and the Highway 150 area, Lake Casitas supplies water to the Rincon area and also to Highway 150 that goes west from Lake Casitas. So if you go over the top of the summit on Highway 150 down through the citrus orchards and the avocado orchards on the other side, Lake Casitas is supplying, at least this year, around 2,000 acre-feet, a little over 2,000 acre-feet of water there. So we deduced from that Ojai Valley was taking about 7,700 acre-feet. During this particular year, the Ojai Groundwater Basin and the OBGMA, and I'm sorry I didn't explain that acronym, OBGMA is the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency. So we extracted around 3,300 acre-feet out of the Ojai Basin during that year. During that year was a drought year, the last year of the drought, and the Ventura River Water District and the Miners Oaks Water District were not able to pump as much water as they could. So this is what they were able to pump and supply to the Ojai Valley. And we'll get into this a little bit later about where the rest of the water came from. So we arrived at a figure of around 12,000 acre-feet per year for the Ojai Valley during the last year of the drought. Now I think a lot of conservation was going on at that time, so this number may be a little bit low on what the Ojai Valley would really use in a good year. Something else I'd like to talk about, during the same year the lake volume decreased by 21,000 acre-feet. So where'd the difference go? We sold 14,000 acre-feet, but the lake went down by 21,000 acre-feet. Well, the balance went to some losses. The majority of it went to evaporation. Evaporation in a reservoir is a major consideration. If you look at these numbers, we can see that of the lake volume, the decrease in lake volume of 21,000 acre-feet, about a third of that was evaporation. And this occurs in all reservoirs that we get evaporation is a serious problem for water loss. Just for the heck of it, I looked up what the Lake Mead evaporation figures were. And Lake Mead evaporation is estimated at 600,000 acre-feet per year. And if you can envision Lake Casitas being at a volume of around 250,000 acre-feet, that means that Lake Mead evaporates more than 2 Lake Casitases in a year. Tremendous evaporation loss from that lake. So what is that, about 100 times what the evaporation loss is from Lake Casitas? Here's a chart I developed. I know it's kind of busy, but let's take a look at this chart. The top line, the blue line, is Lake Casitas storage. The amount of storage is in the left-hand vertical column in acre-feet. And things were perking along just fine. The two bottom curves, the red curve is rainfall in downtown Ojai. The next curve up, the orange curve, is rainfall in Matilahaw Canyon. So you can see some correlation between rainfall in downtown Ojai and rainfall in Matilahaw Canyon. Typically, when we get a lot of rain in downtown Ojai, we'll get a lot of rain in Matilahaw Canyon. But not always. There is some correlation there. What I wanted to point out here is that long about 2011, the lake started taking a nosedive, and of course that was the start of the drought. During this period, 2011 to 2016, the lake lost around 117,000 acre-feet of water. I'd like you to remember that number, 117,000 acre-feet in that period of time. The lake was losing between 20 and 25,000 acre-feet per year. And this includes evaporation. This is consumption plus evaporation. Okay. Here's another chart that I got from the OBGMA. And the top chart is one that I'll talk about. It is rainfall in downtown Ojai from about, 1930 to present. And I'd like you to look at the last 5 bars on the graph. The last 5 bars are the rainfall we had in the drought years. Well, roughly around 10 inches of rain a year or a little less. If you examine this graph back to 1930, you won't find 5 years in a row with this kind of rainfall. So this last drought was a rather singular event for Ojai to get this kind of rain, or lack of it. The dotted line, the blue line, is average rainfall for Ojai. So how close to...
Angelo, how far back did that history go?
That particular chart goes back to 1930. I have other charts that go back to 1906, but the results are the same. So how close to a real water crisis were we? Now this is Angelo talking. I think we were close. The basins were near record low levels, and Lake Casitas was at 35% of storage. I'd like to break off here and talk about sediment. All reservoirs are doomed to fail. It's just a matter of time. All reservoirs that are built collect sediment to some extent. Some fail faster than others, depending on the sediment inflow. Matilahaw Lake has obviously failed. There's very, very little water left in Matilahaw because of sediment. Lake Casitas was built and designed to be off the main channel, to be off the Ventura River. So its sediment accumulation is not typical of other reservoirs, like on the Santa Ynez River, the drainage for Lake Cachuma, Lake Gibraltar, and Juncal Lake. Lake Gibraltar became essentially not usable, and they actually rebuilt the dam face. They made a higher dam face for it to hold more water because of the sediment that was accumulating in Gibraltar Lake. Juncal, the data is kind of sketchy about it. Cachuma is suffering a lot from sedimentation. Their volume has gone down drastically. So why sediment is a big deal is because it reduces the volume of the lake. If you've got sediment in the lake, you can't have water where the sediment is. So whatever sediment you have is going to take away from the volume of the lake. Here's a little simplification. If you have a full glass of water with a little bit of sediment on the bottom, it's not such a big deal. But as that water level goes down, that sediment in the glass becomes a larger percentage of what you have in your glass. And eventually you get down to where the sediment is and you're out of water. Here's a really telling picture, I think, of Lake Casitas sediment. Brenda and I shot this picture back in February of this year. And this is the Santa Ana Valley, one of the canyons that dump water into Lake Casitas. This particular area takes water from the diversion canal and from Santa Ana Creek and funnels it into the lake. What's interesting about this is the water that was coming in this area eroded the previously deposited sediment in Santa Ana Canyon. So if you look at where the large arrow is, it's tough to tell. And we took these pictures from where the bait shop is and where the restaurant is. So we took these pictures from that bank looking west. And where that large red arrow is shows the height of that particular bank that's been eroded. So that bank was probably 10 to 12 feet tall. And if you look off, you can see the different striations in the sediment levels that have been deposited over the years. So as water slows, sediment drops out. So if you can imagine, as the lake was filling, we had water rushing down the entrances, or the creeks that ran into the lake, and as the water slowed, sediment was deposited. And here, when the lake is fuller, we'll have a lot of sediment deposited in these areas because the water is slowing as it hits the main body of water, and when it slows, it drops out sediment. So this shows the depth of the sediment that exists or existed in February of this year in Santa Ana Valley. So Lake Casitas data, the lake storage on 12/31/16 was advertised at a little over 89,000 acre-feet and at 35% of capacity. This was at the end of last year. At that time, we didn't know what the sediment content of the lake was. So if we kind of look ahead and then go back, with the new data that just came out, the actual storage at that particular point in time was a little over 78,000 acre-feet. So that means at the end of last year, we had around 11,000 acre-feet of sediment in the lake, or around 12.5% of the volume of the lake. And that would put the storage volume at about 33% of the new capacity, considering sediment. Looking at the basins, this is a chart of depth to water from the surface, ground surface, to where water starts in the key well. And this key well is near the intersection of Kearney and Grand Roads. So this is showing on August 28th of last year that the depth to water was 265 feet. If you look across the, If you look across the chart, you can see that we didn't have many years of lower levels. So we were way down in the basin. At this kind of level, we had a lot of wells in the basin dropping offline because they couldn't pump water from that deep. A lot of wells in the basin went dry during this period of time. The Upper Ventura River Groundwater Basin, which Mr. Rapp knows very well. It was near record low at that time. The Ventura River Water District has 4 wells in service, and at that time only 1 well was able to pump water, was able to get deep enough to pump water. Miners Oaks Water District, at that time and now, they have 4 wells. They were not able to pump any water because of the water level in the Upper Ventura River Groundwater Basin. What happens if they can't pump enough water for their customers? They buy water from Casitas. So that's an added load on Casitas to supply water to these agencies when they can't pump enough well water. So where are we today? Well, here's the good old U.S. Drought Monitor for California as of September 5th. And if you look down at Santa Barbara and Ventura counties, you'll see that we're still considered to be in a moderate drought. And that hasn't gotten any better for a long, long time. In fact, during the height of the drought, it was quite a bit worse than that. If you see the other areas we can get to severe drought, extreme drought, and exceptional drought. This particular map at the end of the drought was very, very colorful, and I wish I had a slide of that to show you. So obviously with all the rain in Northern California, things have improved throughout the state, but they haven't gotten a whole lot better here. So how much rain did we get? We got pretty good rain this past year. Ventura Canyon, the areas in the backcountry, got 30 to mid 30 inches. White Ledge Peak, which is a big contributor to flow in Coyote and Santa Ana Creeks, rain in that area was pretty good, almost 40 inches. The Nordoff Ridge got good rain, 37 inches, and downtown Ojai got nearly 27 inches. Lake Casitas data, that really nice rain that we got this last winter contributed about 22,000 acre-feet of storage to the lake, which is about a year's worth of water. So this is what that chart looks like adjusted for the rainfall that we got last year. You can see we have an increase at the bottom. We have an increase in Ojai rainfall, increase in Ventura Canyon rainfall, and a bounce up in Lake Casitas storage. So sediment. We had the sediment study come out just this past week, so we're able to update a lot of our numbers. And here's a chronology of what happens, or what has happened the past year in sediment. Lake Casitas told me that back in September of 2016 that maybe there was 1,000 acre-feet of sediment in the lake. I had done some studies about western reservoirs in the western part of the United States and came up with a range of potential sediment in a reservoir, and I took the low end of that scale, and I predicted that there could be 12,000 plus acre-feet of sediment in the lake. The contract for the sediment study was awarded in December of 2016. The survey was performed in February of 2017. And in this particular study, it was 2-phased. The water portion of the lake had a bathymetric survey. That's essentially a boat that goes out on the lake with radar. I believe it's radar. Is it radar, Steve? LiDAR, I thought the aerial version was LiDAR. Pardon? Sonar, right, sorry, sonar. So a boat goes out with sonar and actually plots the new bottom of the lake. The dry portion of the lake is also plotted using LiDAR. That's an airplane with, and I can't remember the acronym, what the acronym is for LiDAR is. I remember the acronym, I don't know what it means. So anyway, the results were published in September of this year. And the results showed that when the lake is full, there are roughly 16,000 acre-feet of sediment in the lake. So, as of September 11th, 2017, the lake volume with the new data chart, with the new data, is around 89,000 acre-feet, or 37.5% of capacity. So our nice winter rain has been wiped out or offset by a sediment consideration. And I'd like you to remember that 117,000 acre-feet number. That's the amount of water that we lost during the drought. We only have 89,000 acre-feet in the lake right now, so we cannot endure another 117,000 acre-foot loss in the lake. Here's a chart. Elevation in feet is the height above sea level of the lake surface. So obviously as we get higher in the lake, the water volume increases. The 567 feet is the elevation of the spillway in the lake. That's where the water starts going over the spillway. And the old volume from the old data, and we all know this number, was 254,000 acre-feet. Was lake capacity at that time. The new volume based on the new study is 37,000 plus acre-feet, and that's the 16,000 acre-feet of sediment. Our current level at 494.28 shows that we have 89,000 acre-feet in the lake and 12,000 acre-feet of sediment. Casitas has in place a water efficiency and allocation program that we call the WEAP. This particular program is in place to discourage water use as the lake level drops. And that's done by decreasing allocations and by increasing water rates. And that's based on percentage of water in the lake. So as the percentage goes down, the drought stages increase and become more severe as the lake level drops. So the new numbers for the water shortage declarations are shown on the right-hand side. So at 89,000 acre-feet, we're still in a stage 3 drought declaration. If we get to 71,000 acre-feet, we'll be in a stage 4, a severe water shortage, and stage 5 is called a critical water storage at 59,000 acre-feet. So what does this mean? If we assume a typical water use or water loss in the lake of around 21,000 acre-feet, I think we can expect to go into stage 4 around July of 2018. That's about 10 months from now. Stage 5 would occur 10 months later than that, about May of 2019. And if things go the way they are, and all these numbers are based on us getting back into a drought, into a similar drought situation. We'll be out of water in 4 years. So at this point, we have about 17,000 acre-feet to go before we go to stage 4. And again, at these rates, if the drought returns, we'll be out of water in 4 years in the lake. So what is stage 5, the most severe drought declaration? Stage 5 will come on at 59,000 acre-feet of storage, roughly. And according to the WEAP, several things occur then. There is no residential non-essential use allowed or certainly recommended. Lake Casitas in their WEAP has a recommendation of 62 gallons per person per day for a 4-person household, a little bit more than the drought recommendations that I mentioned for California before. There's a 50% reduction required for all other customers besides residential. And there's no turf irrigation allowed in stage 5. Something I want to mention about stage 5 and non-essential residential uses, we all need to keep in mind that we can knock off the non-essential water use, but we have to water our trees. And there are great sites on the internet that tell you how to properly water trees. I looked up a couple the other day, and it's just amazing, the recommendations. Water usage isn't that great, but it's methodology. So we can't let our trees die. We have to keep them alive somehow, even during a stage 5. Other measures are possible in stage 5. In fact, other measures are possible throughout WEAP. The WEAP was established by the Casitas Board of Directors, and the Board of Directors has the power at any time to change the conditions of the WEAP. So we'll see. This is brand new territory for us, folks. If you look over the history of the lake ever since it was built, we haven't been this low in water until the lake was filling. So this is new territory for getting into drought declarations. So I'm sure Casitas is very concerned about getting into drought declarations, and if they feel something in the WEAP needs to be changed, the board has the power to change it. So how did the Ojai Basin do? Well, the little rubber ducky shows you where we got to in the Ojai Basin. If you look down at the bottom, around 27 inches of rain in Ojai yielded about 14,000 acre-feet of new storage in the Ojai Groundwater Basin. That's a good thing. If you look over to 20 inches a year, shows that in an average year we could gain anywhere between 5 and 10,000 acre-feet of water in the lake. So we had a good year for recharge in the Ojai Groundwater Basin. And here's what the recharge looked like in the key well. The key well, again at Kearney and Grand, you remember it was down there at 265 feet. Well, as of June 5th, it rose about 100 feet. And so that means a lot of wells in the Ojai Basin came back online, drawing a lot more water out of the basin. You get water that's higher in a well, it's easier to pump the water. Another number, 173 feet. Obviously, we haven't had any rain in a while, so the height of water in these wells is starting to decrease. So as of August 22nd, the key well was down 9 feet from its best number. Ojai Basin use, I think with higher well water levels, use may increase. Back in 2012, groundwater extractions from the basin amounted to around 5,000 acre-feet. If we had a 14,000 acre-foot increase this year, we may have around 3 years of water in the basin if the drought returns. And Ojai Basin fees, the groundwater basin has experienced some financial difficulties recently, so they have been forced to increase their fees from $15 an acre-foot to $25 an acre-foot, and that's an absolute bargain for water. It'd be tough to find water any cheaper in the state of California than $25 an acre-foot. They're also planning to levy a wellhead fee where each well owner would pay a fee of around $65 per quarter. And the reason for this is that the Ojai Groundwater Basin needs to get solvent again. Not that they're insolvent now, but they need to increase their revenues. So with these increases, they're projecting a revenue increase by 250% and rebuilding their revenues to around $90,000 in 4 years. The Ojai Groundwater Basin at this time has no regulation on how much water can be pumped. They may offer unofficial recommendations to well owners, but they have nothing like the WEEP program that Casitas has. They have nothing really formal yet to try to regulate water use out of the basin. And I have a couple of opinions about what needs to be done, but it's going to take money. So I think the Ojai Basin somehow needs to increase their revenues. I believe we should have remote sensing water meters on all wells. Lake Casitas right now, with the Golden State takeover, they're installing some great meters in that system. And these meters can be read by a meter reader just driving through the territory. Right now, water use in the Ojai Basin is reported by the well owner. The water reports come in very late, and it's based on the honor of the well owner to report accurately the water that he's used. So something could be improved there, I believe, but it's going to take some money.
Angelo, can I ask you a question? I'm sorry. Do you think the fact that the well water came up so high this year is going to impact the amount of water that's going to be taken out of the lake? Will they take less water from the lake? Like you mentioned, it looked like about 22,000 acre-feet a year, some kind of average. Because they've got so much well water, could we expect that to be lower in the next few years?
Well, probably, but
okay.
We're talking about a minor amount of water. If we go from 3,000 acre-feet per year out of the basin to 5,000 acre-feet out of the basin, maybe we're talking about a draw of 2,000 acre-feet a year more. So for the amount of water that Casitas sells and uses, it's going to be pretty minor.
Okay.
It'll make a minor difference, if any. Ventura River Water District. Depth of water is now 45 feet. It's gone down a little bit. After the rains, the basin was essentially full. So this basin is in good shape. Ventura River has all 4 wells online, and they're pumping around 780 feet per year, acre-feet per year at this time. Miners Oaks Water District is in good shape. All 4 of their wells are online, and they're pumping around 1,380 acre-feet per year. So hope for the future. I would like to think that there is hope, and I need some water. So I've listed, excuse me, maybe I didn't. I listed 8 things here that I think we need to pay attention to. Obviously, water conservation, recycle, stormwater capture are all things that we need to work into our plans for the Ojai Valley. Grand jury report, I'm not sure how many people out there know about this report. I could not believe how far undercover this report was. It came out in May. I just recently learned about it. It was just recently presented to the Ojai City Council. And I'll get into this a little bit later. The fingers crossed there is that I hope that this causes some stir in the county about planning for our water future. I'd like to talk about potential for new subsurface water sources, and I'd like to talk about the State Water Project tie-in, the Matalaha horizontal bores nicknamed the hobos, possible Santa Barbara connection for water, and our old favorite subject of desalination of seawater. Here's a cover page from that grand jury report. It came out in May, and I think we found out about it in August. It's I think, my opinion, again, it's a comprehensive report. I think it's an excellent report. And it's calling to task the cities in Ventura County for their water planning and their water coordination. I'm not sure that's a good thing. I'm not sure that that's the right place to focus. The cities, in my opinion, have very little control over what they do with their water. It's the water agencies. Here were 4 things cited in the report, just the highlights. They cited a lack of planning for catastrophic disruption of water supplies. And I'll give you a great example of catastrophic. Callegas Municipal Water District, located or based in Thousand Oaks, they draw their water, they supply water to about 75% of the Oxnard Plain. They pull their water from Metropolitan Water District in Los Angeles. That water comes into Callegas via the Santa Susana Pass through tunnels there. Callegas is very concerned that that catastrophic event could be an earthquake in Simi that severs these tunnels. If that happens, there will be no water supply to Callegas. Callegas is a big professional outfit. It's a good outfit, so they're concerned of what happens if that water supply is severed. So the grand jury has cited this, that they feel that there's a lack of planning throughout the county for a catastrophic event that may occur, a disruption in our water supply. Most of the, or if not all of our drought plans that we have on record now from the various water agencies only go out 3 years. And we just got through with a 5-year drought. So the grand jury is saying that they think these drought plans should be extended out at least 5 years to be representative of what we just went through. They cited the lack of conservation planning during non-drought years. So when we got a lot of rain, when we got a lot of water, what are we doing with that water? And then they cited lack of identification of potential water sources that are based on unfunded or unpermitted infrastructure. And my interpretation of that is, what can we do about new water sources that are perhaps thinking outside the box? Nothing that's in funding now, nothing that's permitted now. What can we do for new water sources? So I've got my fingers crossed that that grand jury report is going to continue to rattle around the county and get more attention than it has. New subsurface water sources, I'd like to talk about fractured rock aquifers and mountain canyon basin aquifers. Here's a great graphic of what a fractured rock aquifer is. If you want to visualize the Ojai Basin, a cross-section of the Ojai Basin, looking west, I think this could be representative of what our basin is. In the center, we have a bowl shape full of sand and gravel and a lot of areas where water can collect. And we have a lot of wells in that basin right now pulling water out. Below that basin, we have rock, and that rock tends to rise off to the right to form the Nordoff Ridge. The 2 wells on the right depict what a fractured rock aquifer may look like and what a fractured rock well may look like. And it's literally drilling a well into solid rock, seeking out these fractures in the rock that have water in them. We have talked with a well driller and I think he's based in Santa Clarita. He said that most all of his business right now is drilling this type of well in fractured rock in the state of California. He's booked up forever, and this is the type of well that he's drilling now. So the next picture I'm going to show you is an actual hard rock well being drilled in Ojai. This is the second of two wells. That foam you see coming out is soap. This soap is put in the borehole to lubricate the drill mechanism that's going through the rock. They inject high pressure air into the hole at around 350 psi. This high pressure air blows out the ground up rock and also blows out the water. So what we have here is a combination of water and soap creating this foam. And before you ask, I'm assuming that this soap is ecologically compatible. I don't know that for sure. So the two new fractured rock wells that were just drilled, they're north of Ojai. They're at about a 1,500 foot elevation up the side of the mountain. They're outside the Ojai Basin boundary. They were legally permitted. They were drilled at depths of 360 feet and 455 feet. Total dissolved solids is good. Water quality seems to be good. And the anticipated flow is hopefully as high as 500 acre-feet per year. Doing a cost analysis on these wells, these two wells are going to cost around $125,000 for both. These wells are drilled in Senior Canyon. Senior Canyon told me that the Casitas water that they're buying now costs around $640 an acre-foot. And in 5 years, this is going to increase. Casitas has a water rate increase of 12% per year over the next 5 years. So how much Casitas water would it take to pay for those wells? The calculation is around 195 acre-feet of Casitas water at $640 an acre-foot could pay for those two wells. If those two wells produce as high as 500 acre-feet, then the savings could amount to something in excess of $300,000. Mountain Canyon Basin aquifers, this is just something that we've started to look into. And we're talking to a new geologist and a new scientist that know this area. And we're just starting to scratch the surface. But we're looking at potential new water sources underground in these various areas. You can see the drainages indicated on the map, and you're all acquainted with these, the Thatcher Reeves, Senior Canyon, Gridley Canyon, Cozy Dell, and of course San Antonio Creek down below. And we have the Coyote Creek watershed. The blue circles are indications of potential large water-bearing zones that have been unidentified to this point in time. The one on the right is at Soul Park, the one next to it is at the Ojai Valley Inn. And then there are two sources, potential sources north of Lake Casitas that are in an earthquake fault that could bear significant water. So I'm not saying that this is a drop-dead fact. I'm just saying that there are other potential sources to be looking at for water in the Ojai Valley, new water in the Ojai Valley. State Water Project tie-in, I don't know if you've all been following this case or not, but back to Callegas Municipal Water District, pipes water down to the Springville Reservoir in Camarillo. State Water Project tie-in starts at Lake Oroville. Have you been following the trials and tribulations of Lake Oroville? Lake Oroville, beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, I just said a right under the connection. Go ahead.
State Water Project originates in Lake Oroville, comes down the Sacramento River, goes into the Sacramento Delta. Southern end of the Delta, pumps pull water out of the Delta, put it into the California Aqueduct, comes south to Metropolitan Water District in Los Angeles, and I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version here. Metropolitan, then, as we mentioned earlier, or Callegas buys water from Metropolitan, and Callegas distributes that to the to the Oxnard Basin. A method to connect to the State Water Project is via the Callegas piping that goes to the Springville Reservoir in Camarillo. Right now, there's a contract going on in Ventura Public Works to design this system. This contract, or this report, should be completed in May of 2018. That was the last information I got from the engineer. Right now, there are two scenarios being examined to run water from the Springville Reservoir to the Ventura water system in Satacoy. One scenario is to run it across, tie the pipe to the Highway 118 bridge across the Santa Clara River. And the other scenario is to dig underneath the Santa Clara River and run a pipe under the Santa Clara River to Satacoy. Right now, Ventura is installing new 30-inch pipe westward across their city, and the justification for that new piping is in case Lake Casitas goes dry. So Ventura is planning on additional water from the State Water Project tie-in to make sure that they're going to have an adequate water supply. Lake Casitas is currently supplying water to western Ventura, and that's, as we saw in the previous chart, is around 3,000 to 4,000 acre-feet per year. And that comes down from the Lake Casitas filtration plant. There's a 30-inch line that runs from the Foster Park area down to Olive and Ramona, which is just behind the Mission in Ventura. So that's a termination of the Casitas line that runs water to western Ventura. And my contention is that it would be good if we could complete that connection to Ventura's 30-inch lines and have the ability to pump state water up the hill to Ojai. We have a state water project allocation for Casitas of 5,000 acre-feet per year. It's not a whole lot of water, but there's a second reason for having the state water project tie-in, and that is once we have the piping set up to state water, then we have the right legally to buy water anywhere in the state water project system. Now, I'll give you an example of that. The Central Coast Water Agency supplies water to San Luis Obispo, Santa Maria, and also to Santa Barbara. They're a part of the state water project system. A couple of years ago, they were in a bind for water, and the allocation was essentially zero during that time. So they went out and found a rice farmer in the Sacramento area that didn't want his water. He would rather sell his water than grow rice. So the Central Coast Water Agency was able to buy water. I think over a period of 2 years, they bought around 30,000 acre-feet of water from this rice farmer simply because they were hooked up to the state water project system. The price of the water wasn't outrageous, but it gave them an extra tool in their toolbox for finding water out of the state water project system. So I don't think that hooking up to state water is politically attractive here. I'm a supporter of it. I think it's a good idea. I hope that when all is said and done that we do have a connection to state water. There are pros and cons to everything, but I think if we look at a 4 or 5 year drought coming up, I think we need to look at all possible sources for new water, and I think this is one that should be explored. Another project that is going on right now that Lake Casitas is supporting, they have committed, or at least promised, in excess of $250,000 to this project. This project involves horizontal bores or horizontal wells into the southern slope of the Santa Ynez Mountains just north of the lake. And right now the most active consideration is the easternmost bore closest to the Ventura River. I think this is a fascinating study. I don't know if you're all acquainted with the Tecolote Tunnel that was drilled from Santa Barbara to bring water from Lake Cachuma into Santa Barbara. I read the drilling log for that tunnel, and it's amazing what they ran into in a formation called a Matilahaw sandstone, which is a formation within the Santa Ynez Range. They ran into spring water, they ran into boiling water, they ran into water that was running so quickly that they couldn't put men in the tunnel. A lot of things they found when they drilled the Tecolote Tunnel. So the theory is that if we can get into the Matilahaw sandstone in this area, we may have a similar experience on finding an additional water source in this area. I think it's a fascinating thing, especially the pressure at which this water will be, probably. This well is going to have to be a high pressure well. It's not going to be a little well that's going to trickle water out of the side of the mountain. This water is going to be at high pressure. It may or may not be hot. It's going to be an amazing scientific achievement if it can be pulled off. A couple of drawbacks. The entrance to this is on National Forest Service land, so permits need to be obtained to even drill a pilot well. That's a problem. Again, technologically, I think it's an amazing problem to have a pressurized horizontal bore that you've got to get the pressure down on this water before you can even distribute it. There's potentially a lot of water here. One drawback to that water is that allegedly, or potentially the recharge rate is very, very slow. So that we can pull water out, it may take Mother Nature a while to put it back in. So those things have yet to be determined. But this is a potential that's out there, and it's actively being worked right now. I know Steve Wickstrom is really dedicated to pushing this on and making it happen as quickly as possible. Santa Barbara connection is something that I think is an interesting option. Santa Barbara is currently connected to the State Water Project. They have an operational desalination plant that's running around 3,000 acre-feet a year right now. Their plant is expandable to 10,000 acre-feet per year. They're moving on a potable reuse program to reduce their reliance on imported water. They're quite willing to sell water. We just have a minor problem of a pipe between us and Santa Barbara. I don't think this is going to be a politically attractive alternative, but I think it is an alternative. And again, we have the good old desalination question. Vegas Municipal Water District put together a beautiful presentation about a desalination plant installed around the Port of Hueneme. It's going to be very expensive. It's going to take a long time to put in place, a lot of hurdles to go through, but that water supply is not dependent on rain, and it's not dependent on state water. So I think it's something that we should put back on the table and look at it for long-range planning for our future here. I think some of these polls are showing that Californians are becoming more in favor of desalination in the state. Filter membrane technology is changing rapidly. One of the big problems with desalinating seawater is it takes a large plant because of the filters that are required. The filters that are used require a lot of maintenance. The filters that are used require a lot of energy. There's a new material that's being examined called graphene, and graphene presents a much better filter material that has lower maintenance costs and requires less energy to use. So we could, in 15 years from now, we may be looking at technology that hasn't even been thought of. We may be able to reduce plant footprint, we may be able to reduce maintenance costs, and we may be able to significantly reduce energy required. So for the time that's required to get something in place, I think it's wise to at least, let's get back talking about this. Back in 1992, the city of Ventura voted to, okay, let's install a desalination plant. And it rained like crazy, and people forgot about it. So 20 years ago, let's see, 1992 is about 25 years ago. So had we gone through with that, we would probably now have a desalination plant in Ventura, and probably nearly paid for it. So I think it's time to get on board for seawater desalination. At least let's get the dialogue going, let's get people involved and start moving in that direction. The threats to our water future, I see four, and of course the big one is no rain. And when I say no rain, I'm talking about significant rain in excess of 10 inches a year. And back to this chart, I want you to look at the four bars to the right, and you notice an interesting trend. This is the maximum rainfall in downtown Ojai since 1998. That maximum rainfall is decreasing. And it's funny, the increments between those maximums is kind of similar. So I took that data and put it on a new plot. Since 1998, roughly the last 20 years. So we see the maximums. Between the first and second was about 7 years, and the total amount of rain in that gap was around 100 inches of rain. The next gap was 6 years, and we had around 88 inches of rain. The next gap was 6 years, and we had around 50 inches of rain, and this was the period for our last drought. If that sort of trend continues, and I'm saying if, we can't predict, we don't know, however, the last 20 years have shown this to be the trend, then in 6 years or so we'll be below our average, and obviously the total rain in that 6-year gap will be back into a drought condition, potentially. And the other thing I fear is that some of our water agencies have a great deal of inertia associated with them, and that we've always done it this way and it's worked so far, we really don't have to change anything. So I think we need to watch out for that. And then the other threat I see, and you probably don't recognize him right off, but this is the dangerous steelhead. And to make him look like a threat, we put fangs on him. However, Oh, and I don't want you to throw something or tar and feather me. I'm not anti-steelhead. I just think we need to strike a balance between our water needs and the water needs of the steelhead. And I think the people, and I don't want to call them enemies, we have these scientists who are trying to preserve the steelhead, and I think they believe in what they're doing and in their cause. But I think, again, we need to strike a balance. And what I fear is that we're going to have policing going on to protect a few steelhead, and we're all going to be scratching around looking for water. Again, I'll say, I'm not anti-steelhead. I just think we need to strike a balance. And then my last fear is that we'll keep our heads in the mud and not pay attention to what's going on around us. We need to pay attention. Things are going on every day in this community, in this county, about water. And I don't know if you recognize this guy, but he's Pogo from a cartoon strip some time ago. And actually the saying originated in the War of 1812. The original saying was, "We have met the enemy and he is ours." This was changed a little bit in this cartoon strip, but sometimes we can be our own worst enemy, and I think we need to be careful. I think we need to stay attentive. So what if we just had 4 years to come up with 12,000 acre-feet per year of water? By the way, that 12,000 acre-feet amounts to in excess of 4 billion gallons of water in a year for the Ojai Valley. So what could we do? We need to think about that, because I think time is running out. If we get back into a drought, and if we get 5 years of unbelievable downpours, that'll be great. But if we get back into a drought, what are we going to do? And I like to relate this to, well, this is a good saying, continued drought will force change. And what I fear is we get into a 3 or 4 year drought and we say, oh my gosh, we're in a 4-year drought. And it's going to be too late, folks. It's going to be too late. Drought will force change. I hope we don't have change imposed on us because of drought. So what can you do? And I liken this idea about what percentage, what chances are there for a drought to occur? And what does it matter? I don't know how many of you out there would like to play Russian roulette. And I don't know if you all know what Russian roulette is. But Russian roulette is a 1 chance in 6 of blowing your brains out with a pistol. So what possibility of drought is going to spur action? Do we need a 50% chance of drought? Will that spur action? Is action worth it if there's only a 10% chance of drought? Where do you draw the line and say, well, geez, there's only a 5% chance, why should we worry about it? Well, 5%, I don't think you want to play Russian roulette, even if you had 1 chance in 20 of blowing your brains out. So what can we do? We can show up at these meetings. They're all around town where decisions are made about your future of water. I think you need to look at who your elected officials are. I think if you're not getting what you want from your elected officials, let's change them. But you've got to pay attention. We all have to pay attention. So I like to say step up, stand up, and speak up in these different locations while there's still time. So coming attractions. Maybe a bright spot on the horizon. Albert Einstein said your imagination is your preview of life's coming attractions. Right now, we're using our imagination and we're putting together what we hope is a comprehensive proposal for sustainable water in the Ojai Valley. We hope to present this proposal to the Ojai City Council in October, and maybe that will be a place where we can kick off some action where we assume a 4-year drought and we're going to try to be ready if it occurs. So thank you very much. Questions? Yes.
Can you talk about the relative demand for water between homeowners and agriculture, and if we get into a continued drought situation, how should those entities react?
I think the stat is about half the water is agricultural water. So it's about 50-50 agriculture uses. I think a couple of things can happen. If the basin gets low enough, it's going to be more difficult for agriculture to pull water out of the basin. So they're going to be buying water from Casitas to stay alive. Water from Casitas is much more expensive than well water. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what we would face. Did that answer your question?
More or less, yeah.
Okay, I prefer it be more. Okay,
My understanding from some other source was that, that from Lake Casitas we are supplying Ventura with water. But I thought you were talking about pumping water up to Lake Casitas. But isn't it true that we are servicing Ventura with water too at the present time?
yes, there's a brand new water service agreement that Lake Casitas supplies water to Western Ventura. The Casitas Municipal Water District is a big district, and its boundaries go into the city of Ventura. So yes, there are legal requirements that we supply water to the city of Ventura. If we get into a situation of where we can't afford to send water to Ventura, that's the wrong term. We get into a situation of where is the water going to go? If Ojai really needs the water, is there some way to get water up the hill to Ojai for us to survive? And what I would like to have in place is an option, once we're hooked up to state water, is to also, if we get into a bad situation, to pump water up the hill that is state water so that we stay alive. We're at the end of the pipe. I mean, there is nobody else. There is no alternate source of water, so
Is there water coming from state water to Ventura?
not now.
Not yet. And is there going to be? I mean, is that
Right
something-
now there's a contract in place, there's a study in place in Ventura Public Works to design a system to get water from the Springville Reservoir, you recall that slide? To move water from the Springville Reservoir to Ventura water system in Saticoy. That's the engineering that's going on right now.
Yes. And is that sort of high on the list? Because it seems that would be an important thing to...
It's very high on Ventura's list for a couple of reasons. Ventura needs a state water connection to move their potable reuse program forward. The state is requiring that the city of Ventura have an alternate water source, if you will, before they're going to support the permitting that's required for their potable reuse program. So, yes, it's very high on Ventura's list to get this state water connection in place.
But didn't they say that would take 2 to 3 years
Right, at least.
at least?
Yeah.
So if we look at a 4-year drought, then
Yeah.
it's pretty close.
It'll be
to the
close.
wire.
It'll be close. The design should be finished early next year, and then you have the construction phase. So that's probably a couple of years.
One of your slides showed quite a few aquifers for the whole area. Is there an estimate, and is there any information on how much water those aquifers contain, and how is it economically possible to run use of those?
That's a great question. And I'm curious, the Ojai Groundwater Basin has been estimated at 80,000 acre-feet, which is big. That's a lot of water. If it's really there, if it's accessible. And I've had trouble getting good information about that fact. I think more study of the basin is needed. I think better management of the basin is needed. If it really does have 80,000 acre-feet, and all of that may not be good water, I've heard theories about a lot of that water being saline at some of the deeper levels. And even that's not the end of the world. The water can be desalinated. But I think that really needs more detailed examination of how much water do we really have in the basin and how much water can we pull out safely. And I think part of what we're trying to put together in this study I mentioned is what can we do with our existing water sources to make the Ojai Valley self-reliant. And I think that's a really important question to answer.
I think a key piece of this to keep in mind are the permaculture premises of methodologies of creating swales and finding ways in our orchards and our open lands and stuff so we keep the water going down into our groundwater and not running off to the ocean.
Right, you're absolutely right. And I think
So that's key.
it's absolutely key. It's a part of the puzzle. This is not a one solution fix. Are any of you acquainted with what's going on at Thatcher School right now?
Yes.
That's an amazing piece of work that's going on there right now. And we need to spread that kind of thing.
What's going on?
They are doing everything that she's talking
Oh,
about
the swales.
to increase stormwater retention, to reduce reliance on water coming down Thatcher Creek. I saw one stat where they're planning, even in a bad year, to capture enough rainwater to supply to all of their all of their toilets in the dormitories. So it's a great system that they're working on right now, and I think part of what we need to look at for the future is how do we incorporate that on a wider scale in the Ojai Valley. That's an important part of the puzzle.
I was curious about the hobos that you mentioned. Who owns that water? Will that water end up, if they do that, will that end up in Lake Casitas?
No, the intent is not to put it into Lake Casitas.
Okay.
Putting it into a lake is always a bad idea because of the evaporation. You're essentially throwing water away if you just dump it in the lake. And there are other issues about contamination, but no, that's not really an issue if we did pull water out of a hobo. The intent for the hobo would be to put water directly into the system that comes toward Ojai.
So it would be, part of our Casitas system.
Right,
Okay.
that is the intent. Yes.
So if you were going to prioritize your preferences and you had a magic wand, what would be fastest? What would give the water faster and go on down the list? So if I wanted water next year, I know there's not a prayer of it, but maybe another year, what would be the fastest way to get water? And I'm talking about getting all the permits and all that stuff, but if you had your way, what would you do first?
That's a difficult question.
I know.
A lot of people are praying for rain. I think we have to design a multifaceted approach. I don't think we have enough information about what this valley is. What are our capabilities to reduce agricultural use? What are our capabilities to recycle water? What are our capabilities to capture stormwater? So many issues enter into this. Are you acquainted with the Upper San Antonio Creek Spreading Grounds, that project that was built to recharge the Ojai Basin from runoff from San Antonio Creek? We had huge runoff last year, and we didn't recharge the basin with one bucket of water because of regulations on how much water needed to go down San Antonio Creek for the sake of the steelhead. Don't throw something, I'm not anti-steelhead. The point is that we need to examine these things. We haven't recharged any water coming down San Antonio Creek since that system was put in. And that's unfortunate. So that's another part of the puzzle that needs to be examined. What regulations are tying our hands for putting more water in the basin?
But wouldn't, like, the pipeline be a quick fix, or you could ponder these other things?
The State Water Project tie-in is again, it's not politically popular to pump water up the hill, I don't believe. So the State Water Project tie-in is going to bring, I'm positive that in 3 or 4 years, Ventura is going to be experiencing the potential to bring state water to their city. I don't think there's much chance of us getting water up the hill. I think there is a chance of swapping the water that we're sending down the hill to Ventura and saying, okay, we're not going to send you water down the hill, we're going to keep that here in the lake. We're going to trade our State Water Project allocation to you for not pumping water down to you. So that could amount to 4,000 acre-feet a year that's not going down the hill. So I think that's a potential, a quid pro quo.
Were that connection made, after say it's done, would that give us a backup source of water that your first slide says didn't exist?
I think it would, but there's some contingencies there too. If it puts raining in Northern California, we're dead. State Water Project allocations have varied all over the map. This year was a pretty good year for water. A lot of people had water they didn't want and sold water. So we're still at the mercy of rain in Northern California and of climate change. So State Water Project tie-in is not a guarantee of another water source, but it is possibly another water source.
And how do you obviate the problem of no backup? What would be your personal views on that? Would it be same water source? Would it be a multifaceted activity?
My backup would be desalination. but it's too far off, and we'd have to find the money to do it. Desalination is not dependent on rain, it's not dependent on state water. I think we need to somehow get to the point of looking at desalinated water.
Is it illegal to capture and storage water running through your property and retain that for later use?
I think so long as you don't involve the National Marine Fishery Services, I think
Yeah, I won't do that.
Or state dam safety.
So I think it's a good, noble thing to do.
I find that interesting about legality because I would guess that everybody here is still pooping in water.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you.
I would make a guesstimation here that everybody in this room is still pooping in water and wiping their butt with trees, which essentially will be looked at as one of the most large blunders in humanity's time. Composting and being able to break that down to feed trees is the future that many of us are living in. So to go against city ordinance and county rules is a bit of a renegade operation that I'm encouraging all of us to look at.
I think that's another part of the puzzle, and I think that needs to be incorporated.
But you can also get toilets that only use a gallon of water to flush. I mean, they do make them, but there are compostable toilets sometimes. But you don't have to use one that uses what we've all been using. They do make them.
And there are some real hurdles to overcome if you look at our wastewater. Our wastewater from Ojai, I don't know if you all know this, our wastewater treatment plant is located down near where the petrochem plant used to be, is located in Foster Park. And that treatment plant is built on Ventura property. Ventura has laid claim to whatever water comes out of that treatment plant. So there are some political hurdles even to get to our wastewater for any amount of recycling. And the amount of water involved in our wastewater is around 2,000 acre-feet a year. So it's not a lot of water that we're looking at. So again, we have to look at the trade-offs of how hard do we fight for how much water. Did you have?
I think you maybe just answered my question. I know there's cities, counties, and I think the state of Oklahoma is using the recycled water. So is that, and I know they have a pilot project going in Ventura, but it won't be finished for another 7 years.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear all of that. You were talking about recycled water?
Yes.
Yeah, now the city of Ventura is headed in that direction. And the city of Ventura, if they get their recycling plant going, they can recycle 8,000 to 9,000 acre-feet a year. So there's a tremendous potential for recycled water in Ventura.
So in all your studies, have you studied, like, what is the weather prediction for the future? I mean, is there any such thing?
Let's bring back Bill Passer.
Yeah, but you could predict that,
And
get
then-
on to Las Vegas and put some money on the roulette wheel.
Yeah.
Is there any geological problem with these horizontal wells or taking, water out of the rock? I mean, we do have to worry about all kinds of other catastrophes. I mean, does it destabilize the geological formations to pull all that water?
I don't know. I don't have any information specifically about that. But when we look at the volume of rock, and we're putting a 2-foot diameter hole in this massive side of the mountain, the horizontal bores are going to be bigger diameter than that. But there's technology there that's been tried and proven, like the Tecolote Tunnel, and there are 2 other horizontal tunnels that were put in to bring water into Santa Barbara. So that's not necessarily a new science. So I think that I think those are pretty safe things to do based on what I've read.
I'm an organic farmer from just down the road. Just walked here, about 200 avocado trees, and so this conversation seems extremely important to me and to everyone else here. And it's even deeper than what he brought up. Something I've studied for many years is the ongoing geoengineering projects that are occurring in our skies. And from what I can tell, based on my own observations, seem to be increasing drastically, especially over the last decade. And so it's something that I think just kind of bringing up into the subject feels important to me, because it's, I believe it's affecting Southern California weather pretty dramatically, and weather around the world. And so just throwing that in.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I want to talk a little bit about just cost a little bit more for each project. I know it's going to have an associated cost. Which one do you think is more cheaper versus more expensive? Because I know desal right now can run around $2,400
Yeah.
foot. So.
Well, and I really want to caution about assuming a charge for desalinated water until we actually show the user this is how much your water bill is going to increase. I think we can throw around acre-foot per numbers, cost per acre-foot numbers, but I would like to say let's be cautious about that. Let's try to get to the consumer and say, in fact, at one of our forums on desalinated water that was put on by Supervisor Bennett, San Diego, when they brought desalinated water into San Diego, they went out to each one of their ratepayers and said, we anticipate your water bill is going to go up by, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact number, but it was something like, your water bill is going to go up by $8 a month if we bring in desalinated water. What do you think? Well, sure, do it. So, yeah, desalinated water is going to cost more. But what does it mean to that individual user? How much is it going to increase their water bill? And how much is that guaranteed water supply worth to that user? And the Hobo project is probably going to cost around, the last price tag that I got from the last Casitas meeting was $6 to $7 million to put in that first horizontal bore. Those 2 hard rock wells cost $120,000. Not necessarily the supply of water, but how many of those could we put in for 6 or 7 million? So yeah, there are trade-offs that need to be looked at. So those are all. That's why I have potentials up there.
What about the Santa Barbara desalination plant? I thought there was some talk about they're going to get it going again.
Oh, it is going.
It is going. Oh, it is going.
Yeah, they're pumping around 3,000 acre-feet a year right now.
Oh.
The plant is modular, it's expandable. It can go to 10,000 acre-feet per year. I talked to the water manager up there, and he said they could probably expand to 10,000 acre-feet a year in a year and a half or two,
Wow.
with some more money, of course. But it is an expandable plant.
Nice.
So they're pumping oil, fracking water into the ground. And I think one of your ideas for getting water was to fracture the ground to get water.
No, the ground is already fractured. The rock is already fractured and water is sitting in those existing fractures.
So do you think there's a chance of contamination for fracking water, oil fracking water into the...
I can't imagine, because oil, they're in pockets much like, big pockets, reservoirs of oil. So I think this is kind of an apples and oranges thing, that fractured rock aquifers are aquifers in solid rock holding water, and I think that's a different situation.
The oil's a lot further under the ground too, isn't it? It's in a different place.
I would suspect so, yeah, and we got water here at 300 to 450 feet depth.
What about, there's a group in France that's been doing some projects in the Sahara Desert, taking it out of the air with these structures that you can build that take 30 to 50 gallons out of the air, and we have so much moisture in our air these days. Have they looked into any of that? Because there's no cost, there's no electricity or anything involved, it's just the structure.
Yeah, I've seen that too, and I imagined perhaps where the fog rolls over the mountains from the Pacific.
But in the Sahara Desert, there's no moisture.
Yeah, well,
and they're drawing 30 to 50 gallons a day.
That surprises me. I don't know how you can get water.
The group, it's WARCA, W-A-R-K-A. I contacted the guy. I think they're out of France, but they're having very good effect in the Sahara Desert, which is probably drier than here.
Yeah, I think it depends on the cost trade-off. How much water are you really getting?
Well, it would be per family or per, couldn't do a whole city probably with one.
Yeah, I think there's
Unless you did a
probably,
farm, like a wind farm.
yeah, yeah, I think there are probably some drawbacks for cost versus output there.
I don't know, yeah, I'm just
I don't know
curious.
either. Yeah, just a guess. Okay, if nothing else, I think there's some refreshments back there for you folks, and I thank you very much.